It's the biggest story in All Elite Wrestling right now, and that is the futures of CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and AEW producer Ace Steel after the backstage altercation after AEW All Out and the explosive media scrum with CM Punk's comments about the AEW EVPs, Hangman Page, and others. And we have an update about all people involved possibly being suspended by All Elite Wrestling and not being at Dynamite tonight. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and the biggest story still continues to be the fallout after the backstage brawl between CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Ace Steel being involved, biting, hair pulling, chairs being thrown, black eyes, punches being thrown as well. And I've done quite a few videos on this now because it's a topic that continues to bubble over. It's a topic that we're continuing to get more details about, but what is really strange and just eye-opening about this, and I'm almost certain this isn't going to be the only video I do about this today, because there are constantly more and more details coming out about the incident in question, who started it, the violence involved, and also the fallout from it regarding suspensions, people being fired, people quitting, the expectation of the locker room, the expectation outside of the company, what's Tony Khan going to do, what's happening tonight, because of course Dynamite's live tonight on TBS. What's going to happen with that? Are they going to be there? Now, it must be stressed, at the time of recording this right now, we are still yet to hear anything official from AEW about the incident in question, the reaction, punishment, sanctions, etc. We haven't heard anything, but word is now going around, possibly, that everyone involved in the incident on Sunday night has been suspended. Again, that's not official. These are just rumors right now. It was tweeted late last night by Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and of course huge ties to AEW, really close ties specifically to Tony Khan himself, the AEW president, the Young Bucks. Of course he has a very close relationship with them, Kenny Omega as well, and the Wrestling Observer, F4W Online, Brian Alvarez by name, was actually in the press conference after All Out, and he was called out specifically by CM Punk. He was one of these journalists that CM Punk called out on Sunday and mentioned that he saw the video of Brian Alvarez reacting to CM Punk going into business for himself, saying that, you know, he saw that that Brian Alvarez was incredulous and all this kind of stuff. So, as I always say with Dave Meltzer, when Dave Meltzer comments on AEW about news happening inside of AEW, it's very well-placed sources. Again, you have to be careful as to what side it's coming from, and certainly in an incident like this, where you've got several different factions and groups of people saying different things, you have to consider where the information is coming from. Nevertheless, Dave Meltzer tweeted late last night, quote, "The belief is that nobody involved in the fracas will be at television today, and that other top stars not booked originally for Wednesday will now be there. A lot of talk of it as suspensions, but that isn't official." So that's the key thing there. Pretty much unanimously, and this was also retweeted by Sean Rossap, indicating that, again, he had heard something along similar lines, and he had heard similar stories, and he had heard similar people saying similar things, is that nobody involved in this brawl is going to be on television tonight, or even be involved or backstage at television tonight. They're not going to be there. Now, again, some people are perceiving this as they're not going to be there because they're suspended, but we haven't heard that officially. At some point, I'm sure we will, to be honest with you. So that is the current update about the status of Punk or the Bucks or Omega or anything like that tonight. We're going to have the post All Out episode of AEW Dynamite, not featuring the AEW World Champion, not featuring the new AEW World Trios Champions either. And, you know, from a cynical point of view, you could argue that it will be fascinating, absolutely fascinating to see what the ratings are tonight. You know, I know that we won't hear that until tomorrow, but there are still the cynics out there that are saying, "Owen, it's a work. You're such a mark. You don't understand. Oh, you're getting worked by kayfabe. How dare you? Oh, I can't believe you're falling for it, hook, line, and sinker." Well, if it was a work, wouldn't you have them on television tonight? This is what the pro wrestling world is talking about right now. For a company that has lost quite a lot of buzz recently, it's not as hot as it was 12 months ago. People aren't talking about it as much. People aren't watching the product as much as they were a year ago. This is just this real life incident has fallen in their lap. And if it was a work, you would have them all on television. You would have Nick Jackson come out on Dynamite tonight, sporting his black eye, sporting the shiner, getting it right up against the camera, because people are fascinated. It's the car crash on the side of the road principle. People, they just, out of curiosity, they want to look and see what's going on. If there was ever an indication that this is a shoot and that this incident is real and the heat on everyone involved, particularly CM Punk, is very real, the fact that they're not showing up and they're not capitalizing on it tonight shows you exactly how the situation is. So nobody involved in this brawl is going to be at television or on television tonight, because the rumor is that they may have all been suspended, which would be in line with other punishments we've seen in the past too. Of course, Eddie Kingston was recently suspended for a physical altercation with Sammy Guevara backstage. He was suspended, I believe, for 2 weeks or 1 week. However, it must be said, his physical altercation with Sammy Guevara was nowhere near the level of the all-out melee brawl that we have heard about on Sunday. Eddie Kingston merely sort of pie-faced Sammy Guevara. He didn't throw punches, chairs weren't thrown, he wasn't biting anyone, he wasn't pulling anyone's hair, and it's a completely different situation. Yes, it's a physical altercation, but I don't know, and I don't know about you, but everyone involved here, does a 1 week or 2 week suspension really suffice? Really? Is that the discipline that Tony Khan's going to show? And again, I've said this in every single video I've done on this matter. Tony Khan needs to do something, and I don't think a 2 week suspension is enough. He needs to put his foot down. He needs to say this is enough, and maybe a 2 week suspension plus everyone sorting this out is the way to go. But I don't know if it's beyond the point of no return. I don't know. Now, Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp, who has been excellent in his coverage on this, it must be said, has posted some more details about this, the fallout of the incident, especially Punk's rumored injury. Of course, as I mentioned, there are rumors, and this is what it is at the moment, guys. It's a lot of rumors, a lot of scuttlebutt, and everyone's just kind of waiting. I mean, last night was kind of wild on social media. Everyone was just sat on the timeline, refresh. When is someone going to say something? And as we get closer and closer to Dynamite tonight on TBS, someone's got to say something. Someone's got to report something, right? Isn't that what's going to happen? And everyone's kind of largely silent on the matter, which is eerie too. And you feel like it's like waiting for a storm to come, isn't it? One's forecast. Everyone's been saying it on the news. There's a storm coming and whatever, and you just wait. When's it going to start? Because there is a storm on the horizon. It feels like, absolutely. It's just a case of who leaves, who stays, who gets fined, who gets fired. We know that by all accounts everyone's suspended, allegedly, but we don't know. Now, going back to this Sean Ross Sapp report from Fightful Select, they are saying that they have learned more about the fight that went down at AEW All Out, as being told to people close to Ace Steel and CM Punk. We're hearing more about the Ace Steel CM Punk side of things, which is quite interesting, because I do feel like so far we've really only heard the recollections and accounts from people close to the Bucks and Kenny Omega. Again, when you hear stuff from Brian Alvarez or Dave Meltzer, chances are it's come from the Bucks side of things. It's come from their camp. And that's not to say that it isn't accurate or isn't true, but it's one person's perception of events. It's always important and worth hearing the perception of other people, because again, this is a divisive topic. Whilst I think universally in the AEW locker room, most people to a person have said that the way that CM Punk acted in the press conference was not professional and was wrong and deserves to be reprimanded, suspended, stripped of the championship, fired, whatever. I think everyone, even Punk backers, have said that, or they haven't said anything, because if you've got nothing nice to say, right? But there are two sides to a lot of stories, and again, I think some of Punk's gripes are valid. I do. Like I said, I don't think anyone's completely in the right in this situation. I think a lot of people are really in the wrong. Now, per the Punk/Ace Steel side of things, after the scrum, the Young Bucks approached Punk's locker room, and Punk wasn't answering the door. Now, the reason he wasn't answering the door, allegedly, is because he had just been in a long match. He was bloodied, of course. He had blood on his face because he was busted open during the match. And he just finished what was a very emotional media scrum in which he was very unhappy, clearly. He even said in the media scrum, "I'm old, I'm tired, I'm hurt, and I'm unhappy." Now, the Bucks were then to have said, after not getting a response, to have pounded on the door with claims that they, quote, kicked the door down. According to Punk and Steele's side of things, Matt Jackson was the person that swung first, but missed, and Punk responded. Now, Fightful are told that at that point, Nick was pretty much taking it in, really standing off. It was more Matt Jackson and CM Punk really getting into it. Now, Omega and Steele then pushed their way into the room. Now, when it comes to Ace Steele's side of things, a lot of people had assumed that Ace Steele just got involved because he's CM Punk's friend. He's his trainer. He's also an AEW producer. Why would he go to the lengths of throwing a chair at Nick Jackson and giving him a black eye and biting Kenny Omega and pulling his hair? Well, reportedly, according to Fightful Select, Ace Steele's wife was in the room at the time, which is what Steele had told people had set him off and made him go ballistic, basically saying that there were two guys throwing punches, or specifically Matt Jackson, allegedly, throwing the first punch and cursing and swearing and fighting with Ace Steele's wife in the room, which Ace Steele was furious about. By all accounts, I've heard rumors, and this isn't in this report, but I have seen stuff online that maybe Ace Steele's wife has a broken leg as well, not from this incident, but from, just breaking her leg, that maybe he was frustrated about as well, in terms of, my wife's in this room, you're fighting, you're cursing, she's hurt as well, what are you doing, where's the respect? And this made him go ballistic, which led him to throw chairs and ending up biting someone, which by all accounts was Kenny Omega. Now, the claim made from him was that he was looking out for his wife above everything else. It wasn't so much him defending CM Punk, it's him defending his wife, who was caught up in all of this. Now, you could say, and I would say, if your wife's in the room, you would shout at people and say, how dare you, this is disrespectful. Something would have happened really close in the vicinity of the wife, or I don't know if she would have been caught up in the fracas, and maybe that's why he was frustrated. I don't know. If not, it seems like a bit of an overreaction to bite someone and pull their hair. But again, we don't know the full details. We're only getting, drip feeding some of the details. And frankly, are we ever going to know all of the details? Because we weren't there and there's no footage of it. But according to Ace Steele, he's saying that it wasn't so much Punk and Punk's involvement, it was more his wife being in the room and in the vicinity of it, which made him go ballistic, which made him react the way he did, even though the way he reacted is not something that an AEW producer should be doing at all, but in his mind, maybe it's what a husband should be doing. I don't know. Now, from what Fightful have heard, Kenny Omega didn't seem nearly as upset initially, but things got out of hand and he ended up being bitten, again, allegedly by Ace Steele. Fightful are told the fight was a, quote, very long altercation and that the talk back and forth did not stop after the brawl. Essentially, when sides were split, they were still going at it in terms of arguing, cursing, swearing, chatting all of this nonsense at each other. Now, there were rumours, as I mentioned, we kind of touched on this last night, that CM Punk had injured his triceps during the brawl, and he was coming out of this brawl with an injury. However, those close to CM Punk are now saying that actually this injury, how severe it is we don't know, but this injury actually happened during his match against Jon Moxley at the AEW All Out main event. Specifically, it was during a dive that many noticed during the AEW All Out main event, and that's where this alleged injury happened. Now, Punk could be seen icing it after the match during the media scrum. He could be seen icing his triceps. Fightful and other outlets haven't been told of any severity right now, but Fightful are reporting that they were told that Punk was, quote, hurt going into the backstage fight. What we don't know is that if this injury was then exacerbated by this brawl. Basically meaning that Punk could have been injured during the main event, during this dive. He was hurt, he didn't know the severity of it, and then it got a lot worse because he got into a shoot fight backstage with Matt Jackson and everyone else that was in that room by all accounts. Now, Fightful also are strong to point out that this is what they've heard as a one-side story, which they haven't heard much of until this point. Now, there are rumours currently running rampant that Ace Steele and CM Punk could be both done with the company. We've heard about these suspensions, allegedly, from Dave Meltzer. And again, even Meltzer saying they're rumours. I haven't been able to confirm them. There's also other rumours that are saying that Steele and Punk are done. They're out of All Elite Wrestling. But those close to them say that they haven't actually been informed that that is the case as of right now. As of right now, CM Punk and Ace Steele are still with All Elite Wrestling. That could change between now and this evening, or now and tomorrow, or now and next week. We don't know a ton of these details. They're just rumours, and they're just more talk swirling around this situation of suspensions, people leaving, people quitting, people being fired. Now, virtually, and this goes back to my point about Punk's unprofessionalism, virtually all of the AEW roster that Fightful have spoken with believe that if Punk and Steel aren't let go, heavy amends will have to be made by both of them to remain in the company, or to at least remove some of this heat that both of them clearly have. And that's kind of the latest about this situation. And as I mentioned, it just gets more and more complex the more details we hear, or rather don't hear. There's a lot of misinformation going on about this right now. Where do I see this one going? I couldn't tell you. I really don't, because I don't envy Tony Khan's position, because I think it's a difficult position that he's in right now. I think that any form of punishment has to be dealt, equally to everyone, honestly. Does he fire Ace Steel? I think if he fires Ace Steel, I think CM Punk walks. And if CM Punk walks, you've just had your world champion quit the company. But also at the same time, if Punk and Steel do leave for whatever reasons, if Steel's fired and then Punk quits or whatever, you still have to punish the Young Bucks. You still have to punish Kenny Omega in this situation. As I've said a million times, I just said it a couple of minutes ago, everyone involved here is in the wrong. Nobody is squeaky clean in this situation whatsoever. If the report's accurate whereby the Young Bucks went to CM Punk's locker room and banged on the door and then got no response, so they kicked the door down, that's not acceptable either. And I can understand their frustration. I can understand that they would be upset with what CM Punk said in that press conference. It was totally unprofessional and totally out of order, irrespective of whether CM Punk believed he was right or wrong. You don't say that in a public forum. You don't say that in front of journalists. And I'm sure that the Bucks felt disrespected, and CM Punk did. He did invite people in that press conference that if you've got a problem with me, I'll be walking the hallways and let's effing go, right? But he didn't want to effing go, because when someone did confront him, it led to this. So it's just, there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of just madness, absolute madness. And I think Punk's in the wrong. He's being unprofessional. I think if it looks all the way back to the Colt Cabana issue, I don't think Punk went out of his way to get Colt Cabana fired or let go from AEW. Again, I think that's a Tony Khan decision to make. And I don't think Tony Khan, ultimately handled that situation well, and he should have told other people, other parties, that no, Punk wasn't influencing that. And when it came to Hangman Page was unprofessional for what he allegedly did on television without telling CM Punk. That's not professional. How CM Punk responded to that is not professional. If the Bucks or Kenny Omega leak stuff to journalists, which hasn't been confirmed, and lots of journalists are saying that's not the truth. Journalists will never reveal their sources, by the way. But if that is the case, then again, Punk saying that isn't professional. But also, the Bucks, charging into Punk's dressing room isn't professional. And EVPs taking sides of talent and not looking to resolve situations isn't professional either. It's just, everything reeks of hypocrisy. Everything reeks of just unprofessionalism. And ultimately, as I've said a million times, the buck stops with Tony Khan. Tony Khan has let an initial situation, a situation with a bit of a spark, a bit of a flashpoint, he has let this get just totally out of control, to the point where you've got 4 champions here suspended from the post all-out edition of Dynamite, which is a massive episode of TBS. We're going to Grand Slam in a couple of weeks' time, right? Arthur Ashe Stadium, 20,000 people, one of the biggest episodes of Dynamite of the year, and we don't know the status now of 4 champions. We don't know the status of the world champion. We don't know the status of the trios champions. 4 of the biggest stars that AEW has right now, their status is unclear because of Tony Khan mismanaging a situation. We have heard so many stories this year, outside of this, about talent being frustrated or talent not happy with the way that things have been managed or largely communicated. I think talent's not going to always be happy. Talent's going to be frustrated. Their roster is too big, and television time is like gold dust, and people are struggling with it to get time on, and they are frustrated. But if you've at least got a bit of communication, a bit of dialogue, a bit of not people ignoring you or not getting back to you, then largely they can say, well, I disagree, but okay, I understand your point of view. There is just such a lack of communication going on in AEW right now, a lack of discipline, and Tony Khan, he may have put his foot down at the moment by suspending them, but that isn't enough, and this isn't the first physical altercation we've heard about in AEW. I don't think the wheels are falling off for the company, but it's just a giant mess. And it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. And he needs to fix it, and I don't know how he does that now, honestly. I think he's let it get so far that it's totally out of control. And maybe the way is to let everyone go. I'm not sure, to really send a message, but it's just complete and total madness. But as I mentioned, guys, this probably isn't the last video that we're going to do on the matter, certainly in general. But even today, once we get more details about it today, we'll talk about it and we'll discuss it, because this situation has barely got started, I think. And I think the ramifications and the fallout are going to get even bigger. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.